This week I wanted to talk about a phase that almost everyone misreads. The moment where things aren't wrong, but they aren't finished either. It's a strange phase because externally, not much may appear to be happening, but internally, something important is reorganizing. A lot of people interpret this period as a failure, stagnation, or going backwards. Usually it's none of these things. Very often it's a threshold state. And if you don't understand what's happening, you can disrupt your own growth trying to escape the discomfort of uncertainty. There's a particular feeling that tends to emerge during major transitions. Part of you feels calmer, more aware, more grounded than before. And another part of you feels restless, uncertain, like something unresolved keeps circling back around. People often become concerned when old emotions, old relationships, old dynamics, old fears, or old thought patterns begin resurfacing during this phase. They think, I thought I already dealt with this, or I thought I moved past this, or why is this showing up again? But repetition does not automatically mean regression. Sometimes repetition is verification. Threshold states often feel repetitive because the nervous system, identity structure, and behavioral patterns are reorganizing at different speeds. One part of you may already understand the lesson intellectually. Another part may still be learning it emotionally. Another part may still be learning it behaviorally in real-world situations. So the doorway feels unstable because the old structure is no longer fully holding, but the new structure is not fully embodied yet either. That middle space can feel incredibly uncomfortable, especially for people who are used to certainty, momentum, or external validation. But this phase is far more normal than most people realize. One of the reasons this phase gets misunderstood is because old patterns tend to reappear right before deeper stabilization occurs. An old relationship dynamic resurfaces, an old emotional trigger returns, a familiar fear appears again, an opportunity to repeat an old behavior suddenly presents itself. And immediately, people think, I'm back where I started. But often, you're not back where you started. You're standing in front of the same door with a different level of awareness. That's a very different thing. This is the system checking whether anything has truly changed, not intellectually, structurally. Can you remain grounded in the presence of the old trigger? Can you tolerate uncertainty without collapsing into urgency? Can you choose differently without needing external reassurance first? That's what actually is being tested. Growth becomes real when it survives contact with familiar conditions, not when it only exists in isolation. And this is why threshold periods often feel repetitive right before a genuine shift occurs. The system is verifying coherence, not punishing you. This is also where over-seeking certainty becomes dangerous. Because when discomfort rises, people naturally want answers. They want timelines, definitions, predictions, guarantees. They want someone to tell them, you're okay, this will work, this is the right decision, nothing bad is going to happen. And temporarily, reassurance reduces anxiety, but sometimes premature answers interrupt necessary development. Because uncertainty itself is often part of the restructuring process. If someone becomes dependent on external certainty before internal stability develops, they never fully build self-trust. They build dependency instead. That's one of the major shifts that has happened in my own work over time. Less focus on prediction, more focus on stabilization. Not because perception or intuition stop mattering, but because perception becomes distorted when fear, urgency, attachment, and emotional overload begin driving interpretation. Sometimes the most ethical thing is not giving someone an answer immediately. Sometimes it's helping them remain grounded enough to navigate uncertainty without abandoning themselves in the process. And this applies far beyond personal growth. It applies to leadership too. Strong leadership is not the elimination of uncertainty. It's not the ability to remain coherent inside of uncertainty. The same thing happens inside organizations, institutions, and teams. Periods of transition often create pressure for premature certainty. People want immediate direction, immediate answers, immediate stabilization. But real leadership often requires tolerating the doorway long enough for better structure to emerge. This is where authority begins to move inward, not as ego, and not as control, but as grounded agency, the ability to remain connected to judgment, perception, and responsibility without collapsing into reactivity. That requires patience. It requires nervous system regulation. And increasingly, I think it requires learning how to distinguish between clarity and the emotional craving for certainty. Those are not the same thing. If you're standing in the doorway right now, if things feel unfinished, repetitive, quietly unstable, or uncertain, that does not necessarily mean something is wrong. You may simply be inside the part of growth that cannot be rushed, the part where old structure loosens before new structures fully stabilize, the part where coherence is being tested under real conditions, and the part where self-trust begins forming without constant reassurance. If you're standing in the doorway, you're not late, you're right on time.